Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Kaguya's legacy revealed and Naruto build harem with Kaguya, part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The first few days were strange. Not painful, not terrifying, just strange. My body felt like a prison again, though this time, not cold stone and ancient chakra seals, but soft skin and helpless limbs. I couldn't lift my head, couldn't form words, couldn't even open my eyes for more than a few seconds without getting overwhelmed. Everything was too much. Sounds were muffled and distorted. Light was a blinding haze. My own body trembled at the slightest draft of wind. I had once soared between dimensions and conjured storms with a thought, and now I startled at the creak of a door. The only true comfort was warmth. A heartbeat. A voice. A scent I couldn't name but instinctively knew. My mother. She held me often. More than she had to, I think. I don't know if it was because I was her first child or if she sensed something unusual in me, but she always seemed fascinated. She'd cradle me even when I wasn't crying, hum little lullabies even when I wasn't fussy. She, in many ways, reminded me of myself, back when I first gave birth. So afraid, so caring. Back then, I was afraid I wasn't loving enough, so I showed them as much as I could. She has your nose, I heard my mother say softly one morning, her fingers brushing my cheek as I squirmed in her arms. No, my father replied with a chuckle, she's got yours. Look at that pout. She'll be stubborn. She's already stubborn. She wouldn't come out until the very last push. They laughed, and I cried again, not because I was upset, but because my body insisted on doing it. Everything was new, loud, overstimulating. Even breathing took effort. She's loud, my father said. Good lungs. She's got strength in her already. She'll need it, my mother murmured, quieter now. This world isn't gentle. Not anymore. That made me pause. The world wasn't gentle. And clearly, it hadn't become any better since I was last in it. Still, I didn't let my thoughts spiral. I couldn't. I didn't have that luxury. I had to be patient. I had waited over 1,000 years for a second chance. I could endure a few more months, or years, of drooling and being swaddled. For now, I listened. I memorized voices. I cataloged names. I marked every word, every gesture, every twitch of chakra I could sense through skin and instinct. The first few weeks of my new life were quiet. Not in the peaceful, idyllic way people imagine. No, it was quiet in the way the branch family of the Hyuga clan lived. Restrained, formal, distant. Our home wasn't large. It was well kept. Yes, clean floors, simple sliding doors, a small garden just outside, but it lacked the grandeur of the main compound. No ancestral halls. No ornate silks. No symbols etched into wood to mark bloodlines and legacy. We were a necessary part of the clan. Respected, in a way. Trusted, in another. Owned, in truth. I spent most of my time held by my mother, a woman with tired eyes and hands that bore the roughness of someone who worked more than she rested. Her chakra was modest but disciplined. The first time I felt it, it felt less so, but I shouldn't judge by that. She had just given birth back then. My father had far more, and it was firmer, stronger in every way. He was clearly a shinobi. She's strong, he said one night, as he lifted me after a feeding. She doesn't cry unless she needs to. And when she does, she means it. He often mentioned how strong I was, always with pride in his voice, and for the smallest of things. She'll need to be strong, my mother replied quietly. Life isn't easy in the branch. Not for girls. He didn't answer. Visitors came 3 days later. 2 women from the main house, dressed in pristine robes, their foreheads unmarked. The child? One asked. My mother nodded, lifting me with care. If I could, I would question them. Why ask? Surely they didn't think they were there to see another child. If I could, I would have rolled my eyes at their attitude. The older of the two leaned in, pale eyes scanning me. I didn't blink. I didn't squirm. But I didn't stare, either. I had seen enough kids, had two of my own to know how they react. I could mimic that. Healthy, she finally said, and straightened. No visible defect. No chakra flare. A quiet child. She has her mother's calm, my father said, standing just behind her. They nodded, said nothing more, and left within minutes. There were no blessings, prayers, or talks of potential. They were cold, but not cruel. I knew who they were, or at least I knew their role, and why they had come. It was simple. If I were sick or needed extra care, they would have to assign more resources to my family. That was how the branch family worked. You only had what you needed, rarely more, never less. And that was fine. While I would have preferred being born into the main family, it wasn't something I could control. The jutsu was held together by hopes and dreams, and a sense of raw desperation. This much was already a blessing. And the branch family wasn't that bad. I had watched the system be born, nurtured, and twisted into what it was today. I understood it better than any of them ever would. I knew their cursed seal, the so-called safeguard of obedience, every contour, every flaw. And I wouldn't be marked for a few more years. By the time they came to brand me, it would already be too late. I was taken outside for the first time on the 23rd day of my new life. Yes, I counted. I was bored. It was a cloudless afternoon, the air dry but warm, the garden path swept clean of petals and dust. My mother carried me in her arms with care, wrapped in layered cloth to shield me from the breeze. She didn't speak much, only murmured greetings as others passed. A few nodded. One or two offered smiles. But none lingered. People were busy. The Second Great War had just ended, and people had much work to do. We passed the edge of the branch compound, where low walls met the inner courtyards. I recognized them from memory alone, memories of watching from above, sealed within the moon. To walk here now, even in someone else's arms, felt surreal. Children trained nearby, a half-dozen of them, barefoot and silent under the guidance of a Hyuga instructor. Their strikes were precise, their forms almost robotic in their discipline. Even the youngest, who couldn't have been older than 7, moved like they'd been drilled since birth. They had. My mother paused a few steps away, just far enough not to disturb them, and sat beneath a blooming apricot tree. The scent drifted around us, faint and sweet. I remained still in her arms, watching with wide, curious eyes. You'll be like them one day, she said softly, not really to me, but more to herself. Maybe stronger, if your father's right. I wanted to laugh, but all I could do was gurgle. Training in the Hyuga clan began early. Chakra sensitivity before age 5. Stances by 6. Sparring by 7. Mastery. That was reserved for those born with the right pedigree. Those marked for greatness by name or by favor. Not me. Not yet. I would have to prove myself worthy, something that would be all too easy. By watching them move, I could already tell how far they had to go. Their strikes were too shallow. Their footwork too rigid. Even their chakra control, impressive by child standards, was still inefficient. I could do better. I would do better. That night, my father returned late. There was mud on his sandals, and the scent of iron clinging to his clothes. Not fresh blood, just the residue of long hours training, or perhaps sparring under supervision. He stepped quietly through the house, as always, and came to check on us where we slept. I was still awake, eyes half closed, listening. She's growing quickly, he whispered, crouching beside my mother's mat. Stronger grip today. She didn't cry once outside, my mother replied, voice low with pride. She watched everything. Like a proper Hyuga, he said. I felt his hand touch the top of my head, gentle, careful. Reverent, almost. They were proud of me. Genuinely so. It wasn't the kind of cold, calculated admiration I had once received from followers or terrified subjects. It was softer. Having a father made me think. Was the reason my own sons turned against me because they had none? Was that the reason the toads could twist them against them? Time moved strangely as an infant. Days bled into nights. Weeks slipped by like the wind, soft, constant, and largely uneventful. But even without words, without conscious control, I could feel the changes. My body was growing stronger. Muscles that once trembled from the effort of lifting my head now supported brief, wobbly pushes. My arms were clumsy, but no longer useless. My legs kicked with purpose. And then, after days of failed attempts and face-first collapses, I began to crawl. It wasn't graceful. In fact, it was embarrassingly awkward. I hated it. The lack of balance. The drooling. The way my mother clapped softly every time I moved a few inches forward like I'd just saved the world. But I kept doing it. Because it meant movement, freedom, independence. It meant control, something I hadn't truly had in a very long time. And with movement came opportunity. I was no longer confined to just listening. Now I could see. I could explore. I could press my hands against walls and floors and feel history I had once only been able to watch. My mother watched me closely, always nearby, always ready to scoop me up the moment I got too close to the wooden stairs or slid too far toward the door. She encouraged me often, never harshly, never with force, just soft words and quiet smiles. On one of those afternoons, the floor was warm with sunlight. She laid out a cushion a few feet away and placed one of my toys, some carved wooden animal I didn't care about, right in the center. "Come on, Yuki," she said gently, her hands resting in her lap. "You can reach it. I know you can." Yuki. That was the name I had been given in his new life. Apparently, it was a rather common name in the Hyuga clan. Not the most original name, given our pale skin and white eyes. We even mostly wore white, the entire clan loved that color, and now I was pretty much named after it. Although it could have been worse, I heard someone call another child, Sakura. Getting that name would have been a disaster. I pushed forward with shaky arms, dragging myself 1 inch at a time across the mat. My balance was still pathetic. My grip inconsistent. But I moved, and she cheered me on. "There you go. That's it, Yuki," she said again, with more warmth now. "You're getting so strong." Strong. They had no idea what strong meant. I had once been strong, now. Even their greatest was nothing compared to me back then. This was the weakest I had ever been. It didn't take long before I was left alone more often. Not for long stretches. Never enough to be truly unsupervised, but the older I got, the more I was expected to entertain myself, to nap on my own, to sit quietly while my mother tended to housework or my father trained outside. And I took full advantage of it. I began experimenting in the quiet moments, on the floor of our small home, on my back beneath the rafters, or curled up beside the garden door when no one was looking. I couldn't speak, barely even stand, but I could feel. Feel the wind against my skin, the sun kissing my face. The hardness of the floor and the softness of my mother's arms. But what I really wanted to feel was my chakra. Having used my secret divine revival technique, I had left behind my body and my chakra, all my power, leaving me with only my mind and my consciousness. It was a painful loss, but it would hopefully only be temporary. My body still slumbered inside the moon, just waiting to be freed, but there was no way of getting it out. The fact that I was currently reborn like this was already a miracle. It was all thanks to my first rebirth into the ninja world. When my soul merged with Kaguya, a tiny bit of yin chakra was formed, different from Kaguya's own. It was a tiny amount and would have been quickly assimilated. It had not been for the seal, which sealed my chakra so tightly that it stopped the process, allowing me to use it later. So now, I just had this body, this thin bloodline and this tiny amount of chakra. I was a living clone, a second life, starting from nothing. But it beat staying in the moon. I could sense my chakra, like the slow hum of a distant drum. The first time I touched it, it was by accident, just a flicker, a ripple beneath my skin when I grew frustrated trying to reach a blanket. It tingled, almost like a static charge, but it vanished as quickly as it came. So I practiced. Not boldly, not foolishly, just small things. Breathing slowly, holding focus, feeling the flow of chakra in the tips of my fingers. Most children wouldn't start training until they could walk. But I had waited too long already. I wanted my Byakugan. No, I needed it. It was the tool I had always relied on, even more than the Rinne Sharingan. The Byakugan would let me see, truly see, again. Not just light and movement, but chakra, networks, truth. So, I began trying to awaken it. Each time I was left alone, I focused on the pressure behind my eyes. I slowed my breath. I pulled every scrap of chakra I could gather from within this tiny, infant body and directed it there, to the blood, to the nerves, to the place I knew it lived. At first, it hurt. I cursed the impure bloodline. Normally, it shouldn't have been this hard. I had seen countless newborns able to use their Byakugan almost as soon as they were born, yet here I was, months of trying later, and still struggling and hurting. Still, the pain meant progress. Soon I began to feel something. A weight behind my eyes. A flicker of pressure when I focused hard enough. Still no chakra burst, no white field of vision, no clarity of veins or tenketsu. But the gate was there. Closed. Waiting. One afternoon, as the sun sank low and my mother stepped out to speak with a neighbor, I tried again. I lay on my stomach, arms folded beneath me, and closed my eyes. Inhale. The main hall of the Hyuga estate was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the skin like fog. Tatami mats stretched in perfect lines beneath the gathered elders, their pristine robes untouched by even a thread of dust. Lanterns flickered softly, casting long shadows across the polished floor. This was not a casual meeting. I assume everyone is aware of the child in question, said Lady Haruka, eldest of the main house council. Her voice was smooth, unhurried, but carried the weight of someone used to being obeyed. The branch girl, Yuki. She's only 3, murmured one of the younger men, fingers drumming lightly against his sleeve. And already awakened her Byakugan. That's unheard of in the branch. She also controls her chakra with precision well beyond her years, added another, eyes narrowing. One of the instructors reported she can hold a focus longer than most 6-year-olds. She's been observed mimicking sparring stances, said a woman near the end of the table. From memory alone. No guidance. Lady Haruka nodded, folding her hands in her lap. Her bloodline is clean. No known external dilution. Both parents tested average, though the mother shows particular discipline in sealing. The girl is unexpected. Exceptional, corrected the first speaker, a more senior elder with lines like bark across his face. That is putting it lightly, awakened by a Byakugan before 3. This hasn't been seen in generations. This is the talent of a clan lord, or at least a clan head level figure. A long silence followed. Yet this talent appeared in the breach. He said at last. Which makes the upcoming sealing delicate. That word settled like dust. Sealing. Every branch child would, after they turned 3, be sealed. The ceremony didn't happen every year, so some children were 4 or 5 by the time their turn came. But Yuki complicated that. She should not be marked, one voice dared to say, low and firm. She is too valuable. We should begin grooming her for a support role in the main house. To elevate a branch child would weaken our authority, another snapped. It sets a precedent. The mark exists for a reason. And what if another clan finds out about her? The older woman countered. A child with prodigious chakra control and an awakened Byakugan at 3 years old. If she were taken, which is why she must be sealed, it would lower her value, make it less likely she is taken. But it would also lower her value to us. Lady Haruka interrupted at last, voice like steel beneath silk. Their discussion continued for hours, only their own pride kept them from coming to blows as the arguments became heated. It is settled, then, Lady Haruka said, her voice regaining that slow, deliberate rhythm. The sealing ceremony will proceed as scheduled. A murmur of agreement followed. Does it have to be this way? The elder with the weathered face asked, though he already knew the answer. She will be sealed, Haruka said simply. Like the rest. There were no gasps, no protests, only the quiet shifting of fabric and the stillness of old eyes. But her future will not be the same, Haruka continued. Hiyashi is young, still in training, but he will be clan head one day. He will need strength beside him. Obedience. Loyalty. Someone we can trust to never turn against the main house. There was a long pause, and then, you mean to tie her to him? Yes. Haruka nodded. An arranged bond. Political and practical. A child of the branch sealed by duty, but protected by proximity. It ensures her loyalty. It ensures our control. And if she resents it? Someone dared to ask. Why would she? She is a branch, getting sealed is her fate, but she will marry the next clan head, her children will escape her fate, what greater honor is there? No one argued further. There were no cheers. No applause. Just nods, subtle bows, and the sound of robes shifting as the council rose, their decision sealed with as much weight as the cursed mark itself. Outside, the wind passed through the paper screens with a whisper. Inside, the future of more than one child had just been carved into stone. 2 years later, the seal sat across my forehead. It was truly a masterpiece. Generations of hard work and countless geniuses had poured themselves into making it what it was today. Yet, the seal had changed greatly over the years, from a tool to protect to a tool for control. This had made it less secure, allowing me to influence it secretly. The seal was more than just ink and chakra, it was infusing those with intent, layer by layer, bit by bit, it was art. Dealing with the control elements wasn't too difficult. After all, they applied it on a child, and I might be known as a rare genius, but I was but a child, they would never expect I could influence the sealing, much less know how to do it. After all, even they didn't know it was possible. But as they placed chakra, ink, and intent on my skin, I too placed chakra and intent into the ink, slowly taking control, making tiny subtle changes. That night, my mother tucked me into bed like nothing had changed. Her fingers brushed over my forehead, pausing slightly at the fresh mark. She didn't say anything, but her hand lingered longer than usual. And I reached up and took it. I'm fine, I said softly, for the first time in weeks. My voice was small, just loud enough for her to hear. She smiled. I closed my eyes. Let them seal me. Let them plan my future, draw maps of my fate, assign my womb to their heir. Let them think they held power. Because, in the end, it didn't matter. The truth was simple. The courtyard was alive with breath and movement, but none of it touched me. I stood where they placed me, among the main family's heirs, a rare thing for a member of the breach house. But my talent was beyond most. Even the two twins, Hiyashi and Hazashi, were slightly less talented than me. It wasn't much, and likely I wasn't more talented at all, my blood was poor. My parents weren't anything special, they were good people, but they weren't strong. It was simply that I knew what I was doing, I was no mere child, which gave me an advantage in the early stages. I had plans for how to keep that advantage, and even grow stronger, but for now, I was close to the level of those two. Form 5, the instructor called out. We moved together, a line of children shifting into motion. Sand crunched beneath our feet as stances widened, knees bent, and arms swept into position. Right leg slides back at a 45-degree angle. Left arm extended palm forward. Shoulder low, chin tucked. The twins, Hiyashi and Hazashi, were directly in front of me. Their movements were mirror images, fluid and compact. Both had excellent posture, though Hiyashi's transitions were slightly smoother. Hazashi's foot placement was just a little shallow on the inward step. It threw his weight off, nothing major, but just enough to notice. I adjusted my timing, Not to match them, but to move with just enough variation to avoid perfect synchronization. Arms rotated up, guard position. Twist the hips. Drop the center. We flowed into the forward step. Strike, pull, strike. Chambered elbow, driving palm. I completed the sequence, then reset with the rest of them. No chakra yet. This part was still basic taijutsu formwork. Foundational but important. The instructor moved along the rows with his hands clasped behind his back. His gaze swept over each of us like a cold breeze. Repeat, he said. Again, we shifted into motion. This time, I added a subtle change to my wrist angle, rotating inward, applying the actual contact rotation that the gentle fist required for precision chakra disruption. The others were still drilling by muscle alone. I was practicing the full expression. 3 more repetitions passed. When the instructor called for a break, we all stepped back in sync, straightening as one. Sparring rounds begin in 2 minutes, he said. Pair off with someone of equal level. I remained where I stood, eyes scanning the courtyard. Hiyashi turned, his pale eyes meeting mine. He gave a slight nod. Nothing more. We stepped onto the mat. I bowed. He mirrored it. Begin, the instructor said. Hiyashi's right foot stepped forward in a fast, gliding motion. His palm shot out, aiming for my shoulder, a probing strike to judge distance. I turned my body, shifting just outside the arc, and caught his wrist with an open palm. The contact was light, controlled, and already moving again. He didn't pause. A second strike came from the left, elbow high. I ducked under it and twisted on my back foot, rotating my stance while brushing past him in a half circle. He spun quickly, back into position. His stance had improved, more solid now than it had been months ago. His strikes were fast, clean, and well placed. But he was still thinking 1 move ahead, not 2. I waited for the feint. It came from his right hand, snapping forward, not quite overcommitted. I let it pass, dodging just enough, and stepped into the narrow blind spot it created. My hand touched the side of his robe, no strike, no push, just contact. He stopped moving. I stepped back, letting him reset. His eyes met mine again, a brief flicker of thought passing between us. Again, the instructor said. This time he came in faster. No probing. 3 strikes in rapid sequence, chest, shoulder, lower ribs. I deflected each with open palms, my feet gliding across the mat, absorbing the force through rotation. The 4th strike was different, more refined, slower but heavier. A chakra thread laced into it. He had started integrating actual gentle fist technique. I matched it. Our palms clashed. Not forcefully, but precisely. A soft brush of chakra met in the point of contact. The flow rebounded, neither of us pressing deeper. He stepped back. Enough, the instructor said. We bowed. As we left the sparring mat, I glanced at the faint red mark where my hand had brushed his side during the first exchange. He didn't acknowledge it. I returned to my place in line. The training resumed. They continued to slowly drill the stances of the gentle fist into us all. And while it was hardly the most entertaining thing, I did greatly enjoy it, just because I got to move my body. After so long of being sealed up, unable to move, this was amazing. Training ended with a bow. As the instructor dismissed us, the children split off into their groups. The main family heirs turned toward the estate's inner courtyards, laughing and chatting softly under their breath. Some walked in pairs, some trailed behind, but all headed toward their next lesson. We turned the other way. The branch family children, half a dozen of us today, took the east path, through a shaded walkway lined with white banners bearing the Hyuga crest. The scent of pine and old paper filled the air. I fell into step between 2 older boys, both a year or so ahead of me. You almost got Hiyashi today, whispered Kenta, nudging me with his elbow. His tone was playful, not mocking. He was sweating. Who isn't sweating after training? I asked. Still counts, muttered the other boy, Sora, with a grin. Our classroom sat at the base of a modest wooden hall, but even here, the walls were lined with the clan's emblem. Painted onto doors, carved into beams, sewn into the cushions. A large tapestry of the main house crest hung behind the chalkboard, dominating the room. We slipped off our sandals and took our places. Our instructor was already seated at the front. She was older, dressed in simple robes, her hair tied in a tight, practical knot. But her eyes were alert, and her posture crisp. Sit down, she said, clapping her hands twice. You're all late by Hyuga standards. That got a few giggles. She didn't smile, but she wasn't scowling either. Today's focus is your place in the clan, she said, rising to her feet. The Hyuga clan is your home, your duty, and your pride. No matter where you stand, main or branch, you carry our legacy forward. You are not servants. You are protectors. And that is not a lesser role. She tapped the chalkboard with a short stick. 4 kanji were written across it already: loyalty, duty, legacy, unity. These are the cornerstones of what we do, she said. You may not be heirs, but you are still Hyuga. We spent the next hour reviewing symbols, repeating historical names, and practicing the formal speech used when addressing elders. It wasn't all rigid. There were moments when the instructor let us speak freely. A few kids argued over whether the 4th clan patriarch was stronger than the 6th. Someone brought up the time a branch child saved the main house during a bandit attack decades ago. Even the instructor seemed quietly proud as she corrected the details. At the end of class, we stood and bowed together before the crest behind the board. Serve with strength, she said. Protect with pride, we replied. We filed out slowly, the mood lighter than usual. Sora elbowed Kenta. Kenta tried to trip him back. One of the girls was already humming a training song under her breath. I felt a tug at my sleeve and looked over to see a younger girl, Nanako, just turned 4, offering me a round plum candy from her sleeve. It's good luck, she whispered. I saved it. I took it with a nod. The sun had dipped lower, casting long gold beams through the hallways. For a moment, everything felt warm. Life in the Hyuga clan was one filled with lessons and little time for fun. Kids were expected to be trained ninja, elite killers, we were scouts, spies, and we should be able to do first aid, cook, clean, and more. Not to mention that women had even more to learn, given that we were expected to take care of our household once married. And that was even more so for me. Due to my talent, I was to marry into the main family and become the wife of the next clan head. Which would make me Hinata's mother if I were to go down that route. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on that. I was already a mother, and 2 of my 3 children had turned out badly, so I wasn't really feeling for more. Hiyashi wasn't bad, a bit arrogant, but that was expected of him. He took great care of me, always asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. He was a good kid. Which was almost strange considering how he would turn out later, such a bad father to Hinata. What are you thinking about, my little snowflake? A voice came from behind me moments before a large hand settled on my head, messing with my hair. Father, careful, you will mess up my hair. I couldn't help but complain. It was hard enough to convince everyone to allow my hair to grow out fully, when it didn't look like a mess due to him messing with it. Ha ha ha. Don't be like that, you sitting there, deep in thought, it's just too cute. He teased before finally letting my hair be. I was just thinking about whether or not I would join the academy. I quickly came up with an excuse. Ah, he sighed. I doubt it. The clan has already sent both Lord Hiyashi and Hazashi this year, so the chances of them sending more next year are slim. But don't worry, the academy is mostly a waste of time anyway. I flashed him my best smile. It's okay, if I don't go, I get to spend more time with you and Mom anyway. My words just caused him to laugh happily and mess my hair up further, much to my dismay. I was used to long hair, it felt right, not to mention my Ten no Ito Shibari worked best the longer my hair. And while I couldn't use such powerful techniques right now, I still hope to be able to do it again. Dear, leave little Yuki's hair be, she spends so much time taking care of it. Mom decided to come to my rescue. She stepped out onto the porch, sleeves rolled up, hands still dusted with flour from whatever she was baking. Her hair was tied back in a simple bun, and her smile was soft, worn at the edges by years of service and early mornings, but no less genuine for it. Father leaned back dramatically. Ah, I've been defeated by the alliance of women. Mom rolled her eyes and walked over to sit beside me, brushing a bit of dust off my shoulder. It's not an alliance. You're just mean to her hair. I leaned against her lightly. Her presence always carried warmth, grounding, comforting. I might be countless times older than her, but something about it still felt good. It is an alliance, all against Dad and his hair-ruining ways. I joked as she started to gently comb her fingers through my long, snow-white strands. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind rattle the bamboo chimes above the porch. Somewhere nearby, a group of kids were practicing stances, loud enough to hear grunts and sandal slaps against stone. Probably Kenta and Sora's group. Kenta always yelled when he kicked too hard. I should go train too, I said after a moment. I can't afford to fall behind. Who's behind? Father scoffed. You're faster than most adults I know. But still not fast enough. I stood, brushing off my sleeves. I need to be stronger. Mom gave me a look, gentle but firm. Just remember to be kind too, not only strong. I didn't answer. I just nodded. She was a great woman. She wanted me to be a child, but in this world, there were no innocent childhoods. More so since I knew that it wouldn't be long before war once more took hold of this land. And the third great ninja war would be horrible, needing even children to fight. Waving to them, I took off running. I needed all the training I could get. The gentle fist wasn't bad at all. At mastery, it would allow someone to reach the elite level. And with proper use of the special techniques that came from the gentle fist and the Byakugan, one could reach the level of a clan head, which was the old term for someone who had the strength of an elite jonin. To reach the level of clan lord, or Kage, the gentle fist alone wouldn't be enough. But it was still important. It was the first step I could take towards power. And I could take it freely under the protection of the clan. If I wanted to start using the many jutsu I had learned while inside the moon, the clan would never agree. And I had no intention of trying to fight them just yet. I was far from ready. Hey Yuki, come join us, Nanako shouted as soon as I got over to them. She waved both arms in the air like she thought I wouldn't see her otherwise, despite the fact that she was the only one in our little group who wore a bright pink sash over her training yukata. The others, Kenta, Sora, and Toshi, had already spread out across the courtyard, sandals kicked to the side, feet planted firm in the packed dirt. You're late, Kenta grinned, bouncing on the balls of his feet. We already did warm-ups, and Nanako cheated. I did not, Nanako protested. You're just sore because I got through the kata faster than you. Because you skipped the breathing breaks, again. I stepped into the circle and dropped my stance. I'll settle it, I said calmly, letting chakra flow into my palms. Loser gets water duty. Oh, now you're in trouble, Sora laughed, backing up and settling into a wide-legged stance. Yuki's got that look. You're gonna get smacked, Kenta. Not this time, he said, eyes shining. We paired off, me with Kenta, Nanako with Sora. Toshi volunteered to count us in. 3, 2, 1, go. Kenta came in fast, leading with a low strike meant for my side. I twisted my hips, sweeping his palm aside with an open hand, and stepped in with a light counter. He ducked, feinting a sweep with his leg that forced me to hop back, but I caught the motion early. He'd gotten faster. I adjusted my footing, catching his next strike mid-flow and turning it into a grappling movement. Not to overpower him, just to shift his balance. He stumbled slightly, caught himself, and grinned. Almost. Almost isn't enough, I said, and tapped his shoulder, right over a chakra point. He froze. That was cheating, he muttered as he relaxed, rubbing his arm. You went for Tenketsu. You would have, too, I said. You're not wrong. Across the courtyard, Nanako had Sora in a headlock, both of them laughing so hard they could barely stay upright. Toshi was doing cartwheels for no reason at all. This was what we got instead of a normal childhood. It wasn't much, but it was ours. We spent the next hour cycling through drills, switching partners, practicing strikes and blocks until the skin on our palms stung and our sleeves clung to sweat-damp arms. But no one complained. These moments, rare as they were a kind of peace. After our final set, we all collapsed in the grass by the garden wall. Nanako passed around a pouch of salted plums she'd stolen from her older brother's snack drawer. Sora flopped back into the shade with his arms behind his head. You think they'll let us go to the academy next year? Toshi asked, chewing thoughtfully. No chance, Kenta said. They already sent Hiyashi and Hazashi. They won't send more until they graduate. I tuned out their conversation. I didn't care much for the academy. The clan sent a few kids there, mainly because it was pointless. We fought using the gentle fist, which couldn't be learned there. And the knowledge taught was also not all that useful. The clans all had their own systems for training their young, which had been developed over centuries. So the academy was mostly for civilians, and the clans only sent kids there for political reasons. After all, the Hyuga clan has hundreds of kids of all ages, enough to fill entire classes at the academy. So why even bother at that point? No, we were trained at home, where we would learn to put the main family before anything else, be it ourselves or the village. I'm sure the Hokage didn't like that one bit, but he couldn't do anything. We were little more than slaves to the main house. Not that most treated it like that. Everyone just accepted it. Some people had a little resentment in their hearts, but the main family rarely did anything to earn more. While they sat back and enjoyed the hard work of the branch house, it wasn't like we suffered under them. Nanako flopped down beside me and stretched her legs with a dramatic sigh. My arms are going to fall off. You've said that every day this week, Sora muttered. One day it'll be true, she said, and then you'll be sorry. Kenta laughed and leaned back on his elbows. If your arms fall off, we'll just reassign water duty. Hey, I already lost one match today. Don't push your luck. I smiled faintly at their voices, half listening as I traced a pattern in the dirt with my finger. You're quiet today, Toshi said, nudging my side. Thinking again. Always. He gave a little laugh, but didn't press. None of them ever did. We sat there a while longer before we were called back by one of the older cousins. Time for afternoon chores. Some would go to clean weapons, others to scrub hallways or help in the kitchens. I'd be assigned to scroll copying again, no doubt. Nanako groaned and rolled to her feet. Come on, let's go. If we're late, they'll make us polish the dojo floor again. You mean you'll be late? Kenta teased, jogging ahead. I swear I'll throw my sandal at you. She called after him, already laughing. We followed in pairs, lighthearted but moving with purpose. That was the Hyuga way. Duty, always, just softened when no elders were looking. As we walked past the stone lanterns near the side gate, I glanced back at the courtyard one last time. It was empty now, silent. But I could still feel the energy lingering in the air, scuffed dirt, echoes of laughter, the ghost of a strike still hanging in the space between where Kenta and I had clashed. This was our world. Harsh, disciplined, weighted with expectations. But still, in tiny cracks and rare afternoons, it felt almost like a childhood. It was this rare peace that made people fight so hard for the village, because it had been absent during the warring clans period. When clans clashed constantly, and you never knew when you would be attacked. However, this peace was false, hollow, since it had been bought with so much blood. And it wasn't even adults who paid the price, every way was fought with little kids my age. All went out to fight for a village that should have protected them, instead, they gave their lives protecting it. Morning, Sensei, I greeted as I reached the training hall. Morning, Yuki-chan. I trust you are prepared for today. Yes, I said, fully aware of what path I had started now. While the village had its academy and genin teams, the clans had their own systems. In particular, the Hyuga clan had a system built over generations to ensure the safety of the main family. Since members of the main family sometimes had to leave the safety of the clan had teams ready to protect them, and that hadn't changed just because the clan had joined Konoha. And if you could fight, there was a good chance you would end up in one of these teams for a while, at least until you started a family, and with a war coming up, nearly all the young kids had to join. Good. You will be joining me and my team from now on and taking on missions for the village, Kazu-sensei said, stepping aside and gesturing for me to enter. The two others turned as I stepped into the room. Both were maybe a year older than me, standing straight-backed with their hands folded neatly in front of them. One was tall and thin, with a long face and a quiet, unreadable gaze. The other was shorter and broader in the shoulders, his arms already crossed in mild defiance. They didn't look surprised to see me. This is Yuki, Kazu-sensei said. She's your new teammate. From today onward, the three of you will train and operate together. You'll learn to rely on each other, and keep each other alive. The taller one bowed his head lightly. Welcome, he said. I'm Iwata. The other gave a short nod. Takeshi. I mirrored the bow. Yuki. That was all the greeting we had. No talk about dreams, or likes, or dislikes. Not in this clan, not in the branch family. Our dreams were decided for us, to serve the main family, our likes were the family, and our dislikes, that was left unsaid. Everyone knew if we were asked, we would not say the truth, none would mention the seal that sat on our foreheads, but it would be the answer for many. Kazu-sensei stepped forward. You're here because you've all shown talent, and because we don't have time to waste. You're not a genin team. You're a Hyuga team. Your job is to protect the clan's interests, guard the main house when called, and operate in tandem with Konoha forces when required. He turned toward a rack of scrolls and pulled one free. We'll begin with a patrol assignment. Standard border sweep along the northern range. 2 days out. Iwata leads the front. Takeshi supports the rear. Yuki, you'll run center with me. This is more about coordination than combat, so don't look for glory. Look to learn. I couldn't help but be slightly excited. After all, this was the first time I would get to leave the clan, and more so, the village. After so long, I would once more get to run around in my nursery. Iwata glanced toward me as we moved to the gear racks. You've trained with Kenta, right? Yes. He's quick, Takeshi added. But reckless. Aren't all boys reckless? I said without really thinking about it. Kazu-sensei let out a short laugh, sharp like flint striking steel. At least you're honest. We finished preparing in silence. The scroll with our assignment was sealed and strapped to Kazu-sensei's belt. Outside, the morning sun was bright and cold, the air sharp with the scent of pine. I followed my new team out of the clan grounds and then through the village itself. It was still far from how it would look when Naruto would be running around. But his father and mother should be around here somewhere, likely still at the academy. Still, the place was entirely different from the clan, so much more lively, and so much less orderly. The clan was a well-oiled machine, everyone had their place, it was in many ways quiet and peaceful, but out there. Life and chaos were everywhere. It was hard not to stare at everything. Seeing it like this was so different from seeing it from my prison in the moon. The shops were already opening for the day, their front flaps rolled up as merchants arranged vegetables, tools, and steaming buns under woven awnings. A pair of small children ran past us in the street, laughing as they chased a paper ball, nearly knocking over a man carrying firewood. It was strange, loud, messy, kind of wonderful. Yet, I couldn't forget that it was so temporary, that it was bought with so much blood. This peace, it wouldn't last. Kazu-sensei gave us a look over his shoulder. This is your first time outside of the clan, isn't it, Yuki? Yes, sensei, it's very different out here. Kazu-sensei gave a small grunt of acknowledgement. Don't get too used to it. Most of our missions will take us far beyond the safety of Konoha's walls. Iwata didn't say anything, but his gaze moved constantly, left and right, analyzing everything from the rooftops to the alleyways. Calm, focused. I could already tell he was the type to say nothing unless it mattered. Relax a little, Takeshi said to him. We're not even outside the village yet. That's exactly when people get careless, Iwata said without turning. I like him, I said, grinning. Takeshi groaned. Not another quiet one. Kazu-sensei chuckled under his breath. Quiet ones live longer. If you ever stop talking, Takeshi, you might make it to 20. Please, I'm a Hyuga, and I would die that easily, Takeshi said with far more confidence than someone with fighter-level strength should have. But then again, he was from the Hyuga clan, so among fighters, he was far stronger than most others. So he did have good chances of winning fights as long as he didn't run into skilled warrior-level opponents. We passed the outer gates a few minutes later, greeted by two shinobi with masks pulled halfway down as they munched on skewered dumplings. One of them waved lazily at our team as we stepped beyond the last checkpoint and into the woods. And just like that, the world changed. The trees were tall here, so tall they should be ancient, but they weren't, they were young, fresh, but strong, mighty. I could feel within them the special chakra that helped them grow, would release. I had seen it happen, this forest built almost overnight, and standing now, between those towering trees, I felt all the more impressed by them. Eyes open, Kazu said. Standard patrol route. We'll stop for rest when we hit the ridge clearing. Copy, Iwata said. Takeshi just shrugged and kept walking. I ran center with Kazu-sensei, watching the rhythm of movement between my teammates. Iwata was fast but smooth, never jarring his steps or leaving gaps. Takeshi was more restless, his eyes darting everywhere, his movements not messy, but unpredictable. They were good. Better than I expected. Compared to people like Naruto and Sakura, they were godlike teammates. I guess I had been put in one of the better teams. Kazu, in particular, seemed to be a rather skilled elite-level shinobi. We continued for some time in silence, the only sound the steady rustling of leaves underfoot and the occasional creak of leather straps and metal buckles. Kazu-sensei led us along a winding game trail, one well worn by shinobi boots. The ridge wasn't far now. This part of the forest, he said suddenly, breaking the rhythm, was grown by the first Hokage himself. You can tell by the chakra in the roots. See it? I nodded. It's still strong. I said, looking around openly with my Byakugan. He nodded. Yes, strong chakra is different from most, but all chakra leaves a trace. If you ever see someone leaving a trail of chakra around their entire body without using any jutsu, run. He spent the trip giving advice. Always pointing out this or that. I enjoyed it mostly. Well, it was boring, but being able to jump around on the trees was fun. It was pretty easy, then again. I had great chakra control, it was just the amount being much less than I would have wanted. Long gone were the days of having an endless amount of it. I can only imagine how I would have looked to the current Hyuga clan. After all, back then, I had horrible control, I would have been a blazing sun. We continued to travel for an entire day. Alright, time to rest for the night. Sensei called as we reached a clearing. Hi, we responded as she stopped, though none of us had jumped down to the ground yet and instead remained on the tree. Byakugan. Takeshi loudly activated his dojutsu, carefully scanning the ground below, as for any traps or enemies. Iwata and I did the same, we just didn't scream the fact to the rest of the world. Seems safe. Iwata commented. Seems fairly used, likely a common stopover for Konoha shinobi, I added. Correct all of you, and you in particular, Yuki, the other two knuckleheads have been told about this, but you did it on your own, very good, Sensei said with a satisfied nod as he jumped down. We quickly set up camp, or rather the boy did, while Sensei guided me on all the things that was involved, telling me what to look out for, why some things were done in certain ways. It was all important information for a shinobi, yet honestly, I didn't care all that much. I wasn't a fan of camping. I wished I had wood release, then I could just build a house to sleep in. Yet, I wasn't blessed with that. Not unless I could recover the 10 tails. And yeah, that wasn't likely anytime soon. For now, all I could do was play my role well and wait. That night, I also learned that camping as a shinobi is even worse than normal camping. Not only do you have to deal with all the normal downsides of sleeping outside, but you also have to be ready to deal with possible attacks, and you have to spend part of the night awake keeping watch. And even if you get some sleep, you can't sleep too deeply, because you have to get up and be ready to fight instantly in case of an attack. When morning arrived, I felt like crap. My back ached. My arms were sore. There were definitely twigs in my hair. I was cold, slightly damp, and kind of bitter about everything. Honestly, why wasn't there a proper safe house out here? We were only a few hours from the village. If this place got so much shinobi traffic, they could at least install a roof and a futon. Or build a shed. Or something. Instead, I was crouched next to a dying fire, gnawing on a rice ball that tasted like it had lost a war with time. Up and moving, Kazu-sensei called. We have half the patrol loop left, and I want it finished before the midday sun hits. Understood, we all mumbled. Takeshi yawned so hard he nearly dislocated something. Do we have to leap tree to tree the whole time? Can't we just walk like civilians for once? If you want to step on a trap or leave a trail anyone can follow, be my guest, Kazu said, already halfway up the first tree. Iwata was right behind him. Silent as ever. I forced myself to follow, my legs burning slightly as I jumped branch to branch after them. Running from tree to tree looked a lot cooler than it felt. The branches were springy, sure, but not exactly built for comfort. You had to land just right or deal with the jarring rebound through your knees. The bark was uneven, slippery in places, occasionally covered in bird poop, which Takeshi discovered the hard way. Ugh, gross. Who even? Why this branch? You picked it, Iwata said. Nature is cruel, I muttered as I passed him. We kept our spacing tight but staggered. Iwata up front, scanning ahead. I followed behind Kazu-sensei, who adjusted our route as needed. Takeshi trailed behind, swinging wide occasionally to cover our flanks. This area has seen some movement recently, Kazu said as we paused on a wide branch overlooking a shallow ravine. Yuki, what do you notice? I activated my Byakugan again and focused. There's some residual chakra in the earth. 3 sources, probably 2 or 3 days old. It's faint. No lingering intent. Good. Takeshi. Broken twigs on the slope, uphill side, he said. They slid down, didn't try to hide it. I'd say either they were in a hurry, or really stupid. Both, Kazu replied. Iwata. There's a burn mark in the soil, he said. Someone used a basic fire jutsu, low power, probably for light or intimidation. Solid, Kazu said. Now, what does that tell us? That they didn't expect to be followed, I said. They weren't subtle, Iwata added. But they were smart enough not to linger, Takeshi said, so maybe they were just passing through. Kazu nodded. Exactly. And more importantly, they came from the direction we're headed. That quieted us. Keep your eyes sharp, he said. They are likely another team from the village, but you can never be too sure. We nodded, and the formation resumed. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of movement, tree to tree, with the forest stretching endlessly ahead of us. Occasionally Kazu would stop, drop to the forest floor, and make us examine something, animal tracks, disturbed roots, the way sunlight reflected off unnatural surfaces. Everything was a lesson. Everything had a reason. Shinobi die because they make assumptions, he said at one point, holding up a bent twig that none of us had noticed. Or worse, they stopped noticing. It was exhausting. Mentally, more than anything. Every sound, Every shape, every gust of wind was something to be considered. There was no such thing as passive observation, not when you were supposed to keep the main house alive. Finally, just after the sun hit its peak, we reached the old marker post that marked the end of the patrol route, a tall wooden spike driven into the earth, carved with faded clan seals and recent scratch marks from Kunai. Kazu dropped down and tapped the side of the marker. Patrol complete. Good work. Iwata dropped beside him silently. Takeshi flopped to the ground like a dramatic idiot and let out a groan. I hate tree running. You love it, I said. I love the idea of it. I hate the reality. Kazu rolled out a small scroll and made a note with a brush. Yuki, good awareness today. You're adjusting fast. Thank you, sensei, I said. Don't get cocky. I won't. Good. We rested there for just a bit longer before heading back. I didn't complain this time. Not out loud, but I did mentally log every bruise and ache and file them under reasons I deserve a bath and warm rice when I get home. Because honestly, that was one long patrol. We reached the outer wall of the Hyuga compound just as the sun began to sink behind the village rooftops. The gates opened without a word, the guards already recognizing Kazu-sensei's chakra signature. As the four of us stepped through, I felt the shift immediately, like slipping into still water after a run through the forest. Everything inside was calm, controlled. Kazu-sensei slowed, then turned to face us. Good work. We kept pace, covered the full route, and you followed instructions without getting yourselves maimed. I'm calling that a win. Takeshi gave a lopsided grin. Sensei, your confidence in us is overwhelming. You want confidence. Don't trip on tree roots, Kazu said dryly. Iwata said nothing, but he bowed sharply, as did I. Kazu rolled his shoulder and glanced down the path toward the main house. I'll go report to the elders. You three are dismissed for the evening. Clean up, rest, and be ready to resume morning drills. Understood, we said in unison. He turned and walked off without another word, disappearing down a branching path that led toward the upper compound, where only main house members and their personal guards were allowed without permission. I stood there for a moment, letting my shoulders relax. The moment Kazu-sensei was out of sight, Takeshi stretched with a loud groan. I swear my spine is permanently misaligned. You need to work on your landing form, Iwata said. I land like a cat. You land like a cat falling off a roof. Rude. I bit back a smile. I'm going home. If I don't wash this dust off soon, it's going to fuse with my skin. Takeshi made a mock bow. As expected of our little princess. I raised an eyebrow. Jealousy doesn't look good on you. Neither does sweat, he muttered. Iwata gave a short nod. See you tomorrow. We split up there, each of us heading toward our corner of the compound. I turned down the long pathway that cut through the heart of the branch district, already hearing the evening bells ringing from the central towers. The smell of steamed rice and roasted fish drifted through the air. Children ran ahead of their parents, arms outstretched like wings. Adults moved with purpose, dressed in simple robes, carrying baskets, water jars, and tools. The Hyuga clan was so very different from what had been described in the anime. I couldn't say whatever that was because the clan would change in the future, or because it had just not been shown in detail. But the clan was massive in size and scale, a small village of its own. The main family sat at its peak, arranged across 9 families, 8 under elders, one led by the clan head himself, but that was just the crown. The real body of the clan pulsed here, in the branch family's quarters, where thousands lived, worked, trained, and served. And despite the weight of that word, served, it wasn't miserable. As much as we were servants, enslaved by the seals on our foreheads, the main family still treated us reasonably well. We were, after all, the foundation of their power, and their pride. Without us, there would be no clan at all. Sure, a few of the 100 or 200 members of the main family might treat us badly, but it was rare. And given my position in the clan, even the main family, who often ignored the branch clan, still treated me warmly. I was, after all, very talented, even if I was only slightly more pure than the average Hyuga, yet my talent with the Byakugan was beyond anyone else's. And that wasn't going to change. Even now, I could open them without hand signs, something most couldn't do until their mid-teens, and even then, plenty less talented clansmen never achieved that feat at all. Honestly, I don't get the point of using such a thing at all. After all, I never used such a thing when I was in my main body. And neither did my son, nor his son. It took many years before hand signs even became a thing. So the fact that people needed it just to use their own eyes was ridiculous. Truly, how far the world had fallen without my guidance. Mom, I'm home, I shouted as I reached our modest little house. The door was already open, and the scent of warm broth drifted out into the evening air. The paper lanterns had been lit along the walkway, casting soft light across the garden stones. My sandals hit the threshold, and I tugged off my dust-covered outer robe with a sigh. In the kitchen, her voice called back. I stepped in and found her at the stove, sleeves tied up, stirring a pot with practiced ease. A half-cut daikon sat on the counter beside her, and 2 bowls were already set out on the low table. "You're filthy," she said without turning around. I slept in a bush and got dive-bombed by Takeshi's poor balance. It was a long day. I believe it. She gave the stew a final stir and turned toward me, holding out a damp cloth. "Wipe your face before you sit." I did as told, the cloth warm and rough against my skin. A small comfort, but a real one. I slid onto the cushion across from her and took in the little things I'd missed while I was out. The vase of fresh camellias on the windowsill, the extra pair of chopsticks left on the tray in case father came home early, the faint hum of neighbors through the wall, laughing over dinner. "Mission go well?" she asked as she served up the soup. "Fine." Kazu-sensei was in one of his lecture moods. We did half the patrol while he talked about how chakra settles in the soil and how the wrong kind of silence is more dangerous than noise. That sounds like him. Takeshi fell out of a tree. That also sounds like him. I snorted into my soup. For a while, we just ate. No rush. No pressure. The world outside the house always seemed to demand things from me: discipline, humility, precision, but inside, I was just her daughter. "Are they treating you well?" she asked after a moment. "They're not cruel," I said. "Not to me." She nodded. "And the other two?" "Iwata barely speaks. Takeshi won't stop speaking. I guess they cancel each other out." She smiled softly. "I get the feeling Kazu-sensei put me with them for a reason," I added. "He did. You're meant to balance each other." She paused. "And also to be watched. You're important to them now. Because of Hiyashi. Because of what you represent," she said gently. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She reached across the table and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're doing well, Yuki. I know it's tiring." "It is," I admitted. "Sometimes I want to punch the entire clan in the face." "That's fair. But wait until you're strong enough to do it all at once." That got a real laugh out of me. After dinner, I grabbed a fresh robe and slipped out of the house before my mother could remind me to fold my laundry. The nearest bathhouse was only a short walk away, built along the edge of the branch district, nestled beside a small bamboo grove where steam curled lazily into the night air. The building itself was plain but well kept, a long structure of wooden walls and frosted windows that glowed from within. As I stepped inside, warmth hit me immediately. The scent of cedar, soap, and mineral-rich water filled the air. "Evening, Yuki-chan," the old woman behind the counter greeted. She barely looked up from her knitting. "You look like you rolled through a field." "Such is the life of a field shinobi," I said. "Ah, the glamorous life of a shinobi," she replied with a grin. "Buckets are in the usual spot. Don't track mud past the second step this time." I bowed politely and made my way in. The changing room was half full, voices low and comfortable. Most of the girls here were around my age or a little older, already in the middle of drying their hair or slipping into fresh robes. I caught sight of Nanako toward the back, her pale hair tied up in a messy knot as she struggled to fold her towel. "You look like someone shoved you through a pine tree," she said as soon as she saw me. "They didn't shove me," I said. "One of my teammates fell on me." "Oh, of course." She gave a dramatic sigh. "Boys." We walked into the bathing room together. Steam rose in soft clouds around the edges of the spring, and the sound of running water echoed gently off the tile. I slipped onto a stool and started scrubbing down with a firm bristled brush. Nanako sat beside me, humming softly. "I heard Kazu-sensei took you out," she said. "First field run." "Yeah, North Ridge Patrol. Fancy." "Not really," I said. "Kazu lectured the whole time, and my two teammates were troublesome. I could have used another girl on the team." "Tell me about it," Nanako sighed. "I got stuck on inventory duty this morning. Do you know how many different kinds of gauze there are?" "Too many. 17. 17, Yuki." I blinked. "That's actually impressive." "I know, right?" she huffed, scrubbing behind her ears. "And the worst part, if you mislabel even one, the senior medics treat you like you tried to poison someone." I couldn't help but smile. Once clean, we slid into the bath, the hot water lapping gently against our skin. The heat settled into my muscles, chasing away the cold from the forest trail and the stiffness from the hard tree limbs we'd slept on. Around us, a handful of other girls were already soaking, chatting quietly or leaning against the stone ledges with their eyes closed. "Any weird encounters?" Nanako asked after a while. "Bandits, traps, rabid squirrels." "Nothing like that," I said. "Just signs that someone passed through a few days ago. Kazu said not everything out there is dangerous, but that you should act like it might be anyway." "Sounds about right." We lapsed into a quiet moment, just the soft sound of the water and the low murmur of other conversations floating around us. Then one of the girls across the spring called over, "So, is it true you're going to marry the clan heir?" I let out a slow breath. "That question again. It's been discussed," I said, keeping my tone light. "Lucky," someone muttered. "You'll get the best silk robes and won't have to work again." "Yeah, and your kids will be part of the main family. It's like a dream come true," Nanako added, to which everyone swooned. It was almost like a fairy tale. The commoner marrying the prince. And it was really close to that in reality. I knew the story well. So did they. The way they looked at me sometimes, like I had already stepped into silk slippers and moved into one of those airy, perfumed rooms on the main family grounds, it was flattering, I guess. If only they knew what that actually meant. "Just don't forget us when you move into the big house," someone joked from across the pool. "Especially not if they've got heated floors," added another. I smirked and let my head tip back against the stone. "You act like I'm leaving tomorrow." "Maybe not tomorrow, but you're already halfway there," Nanako said, nudging my leg under the water. "You're the only one our age who gets tea invitations from the main house." "They don't invite me for my tea skills," I muttered. "No," she said, "but they do ask you to stand behind Hiyashi-sama during formal events." "That counts." I didn't reply. I didn't have to. They were right, after all. The elders had already started positioning me. The extra etiquette lessons. The silences in rooms I wasn't meant to hear. The way some of the senior women had started calling me little lady instead of by name. But that didn't mean I liked it. Another girl sank deeper into the water and sighed dreamily. "Imagine getting to wear real gold embroidery. I bet they even have pillows that match their formal yukata." "I'd settle for a robe that wasn't patched on the elbows," someone else said. Laughter rippled around the bath, but it was gentle, never bitter. That was the thing about the Branch family. We knew our place. But we still dreamed. After a while, the chatter faded into lazy quiet. The water steamed around us, and I let my eyes drift shut for a moment, breathing deep. Warmth. Laughter. The scent of cedar. The courtyard had been cleared before sunrise. Dust had been swept, stones scrubbed, and fresh mats laid out along the eastern wall, where a row of main house elders now sat under the shade of the Sakura pavilion, robes stiff with formality and eyes sharp with quiet judgment. I stood barefoot in the center of the training floor, sleeves rolled back, toes pressing lightly into the polished stone. Across from me stood Hiyashi and his twin, both already settled into opening stances. We'd been doing this for months now. Officially, it was joint training. A rare opportunity for the clan's brightest to hone their skills together. Unofficially, it was a spectacle, a quiet performance for the future of the Hyuga clan. The main house's heirs against the most talented branch girl in a generation. And I was expected to keep up. I cracked my neck once and brought my hands into position. Begin, called one of the elders. The elder's voice had barely faded when Hiyashi lunged. His front foot kissed the mat with barely a sound, his right palm arcing in from the side, not a brute force strike, but a flowing motion aimed at my left shoulder. Just beneath the collarbone. A tenketsu point. Disrupt that, and my entire left arm would be numb. I shifted weight onto my back foot and turned with him, letting his strike pass by like water around a stone. My right hand flicked up, fingers outstretched, not to hit, but to redirect. Gentle contact. That was the core of the gentle fist. Redirection. Precision. He didn't stumble, of course. Hiyashi never did, but he took the signal. I'd seen it coming. The moment passed, and then his brother was there, circling from the right, low and fast. Not as sharp as Hiyashi, but heavier in style. He liked to press with double strikes, one high and one low. The kind that overwhelmed less trained opponents and made them flinch. I didn't flinch. He went for the hip tenketsu, an awkward angle to block without overextending. So I didn't block. I dipped under the strike, dropped into a tight crouch, and launched upward with my palm angled toward his diaphragm, not a full blow, just a brush. Enough to send chakra into his solar plexus and make him step back. He did. Breath control lost. Opening gained. Hiyashi came again. He always fought cleaner when his brother was forced to retreat. He flowed like a textbook diagram come to life, beautiful, elegant, and practiced. His strikes were conservative but fast. Measured. He kept his form tight, elbows tucked in, never overcommitting. He aimed 2 strikes in a burst, first at my right shoulder, then my thigh. Classic sequence, top then bottom. Break their rhythm. I stepped into the space between the attacks. Hiyashi's eyes widened for a split second. My palm met his ribs, not harsh, but firm. Chakra flowed from my fingertips into the soft web of his network. Not enough to injure, but enough to let him know I could have. We reset. Again, called the elder. No applause. No words of approval. But I caught one of the observers leaning forward ever so slightly. I could only sigh at that before having to look back at my 2 older opponents. The second round began. This time, the brothers came at once. Coordinated. Hiyashi pressed high, spinning into a leftward arc, while his twin flanked low with a sweeping palm that would knock me off balance if I misjudged the timing by even half a breath. I counted the rhythm in my head. 1, 2, 3. And spun backward into a roll, letting the pressure pass over me. The twins collided for a brief moment where I should have been. They caught themselves quickly, but even that half second of disruption was mine. I landed on one knee, exhaled through my nose, and rose back into stance. Later that week, I found myself in the west courtyard again, but this time, there were no elders watching from the shade. No twin circling behind me. No audience expecting perfection. Just Hiyashi. The air was warm but not heavy. The sky was clear. The courtyard itself was quiet, tucked away behind a long wooden veranda where someone had set out a water jug and 2 towels. Hiyashi stood barefoot on the mat, arms loose at his sides, posture already settled into the ready stance. Sorry, he said as I approached, for the other day. I stepped in too hard on that last sequence. You always do, I replied. But I'd rather you try than hold back. That earned me a nod, his version of a smile. We stepped onto the mat together and took our stances. No command this time, no elder's voice, just a silent agreement. We moved in slow rhythm. Not sparring, just practicing form, mirrored motions, flowing like kata but with real pressure behind each strike. He would press, I would respond. I would rotate, and he would adapt. How are things at the academy? I asked as I guided his strike away from my shoulder, still as boring as always. Hiyashi adjusted his stance and came at me again, slower this time, less intent to hit and more to maintain the flow. Boring, yes, but predictable, which is better than some of the politics they make me sit through. Politics already, I parried, angling my palm to brush against his wrist before resetting. You're what, 12? Almost 13, he corrected. And yes, they've already started testing how I hold my tongue. I laughed softly. Do you pass? I don't speak unless I have to. That usually works. He stepped into another form, left foot sliding smoothly, hand raised in a palm strike that I met with both arms, crossing to absorb the motion. His weight shifted in response, but he didn't try to overpower me. He just flowed back into guard. I envy that, I said. If I go too quiet, someone starts worrying I'm plotting something. You are plotting something. Yes, but I don't need them knowing that. That earned the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but something very close. We circled again, fluid and practiced. The courtyard's silence made every step feel crisp. There was no pressure, no seal bearing down, no expectations echoing off the stone, just the rhythm of our breathing and the tap of bare feet. The war will break out soon, won't it? I asked. Yes. What will the clan do? He paused. We will do our part as a clan of Konoha. I hear that they plan to send as many as 200 of the branch house out, and that the fourth elder plans to send out someone from the main house. I didn't take advantage of his mistake, it wouldn't be fair, and this wasn't a fight to the death. What will you do? You will graduate soon, won't you? I will, Hiyashi replied, stepping into the next form. His voice didn't waver, but there was the briefest delay in his movement, barely more than a breath. And when I do, I expect I'll be placed in a team which won't do many dangerous missions, likely won't get to leave the village. Of course, I said, matching his movement. They'll want their air well protected, and leave the fun to his brother. He winced, just slightly. Not at the truth of the words, but at how easily I said them. We shifted into a new sequence. This one was slower, more circular, arms sweeping wide to test spacing and flow. It felt more like a dance than a fight. I heard one of the elders talking, I said. Apparently there's a proposal to use Byakugan teams for forward recon. No backup, no support. Just vision and speed. Hiyashi's eyes narrowed. That's foolish. They'll burn through chakra too fast. Visibility alone doesn't mean safety. I tilted my head. When has the village ever cared for something like that? They lose nothing should someone from the branch family die. He didn't answer right away. His strikes became more precise again. Smaller, sharper, thoughtful. I like the politics no less than you, he said finally. You will be clan head one day, you have to like them. I teased. Yet, Hiyashi wasn't weak, whatever it was in his taijutsu or his wit. You will be my wife by then, I can make you deal with the politics. He teased back, and mercilessly at that. Like the elders will ever allow that, someone from the branch house. Messing with their precious policies. I fired back, not willing to even accept that fate. By then, you will be married to the clan leader, they won't complain, you will be one of us. It was sweet of him to include me like that. Honestly, the loss of his brother had hit him harder than I would have thought. He was such a kind man that it was hard to connect him with Hinata's cold father. Or maybe it was I who had changed him. After all, I had no doubt changed a lot, being so talented, changing the entire dynamic of his youth, as so much of it centered around our future marriage. We slowed to a stop after the next cycle of forms. Neither of us said anything for a while. The only sound was the distant rustling of bamboo and the soft creak of an old floorboard somewhere on the veranda. Hiyashi stepped over to the jug and poured water into 2 small cups. He handed me one without a word. I took it, grateful for the pause. I will be one of them once I birth you an heir. Until then, I will be an outsider. Hiyashi didn't argue with me. He just sat down beside me, legs crossed, the water jug resting between us. The silence stretched comfortably, not empty, but full of things unspoken. He took a sip from his cup before finally speaking. That's not how I see you. That's not how they see me, I replied. No, he admitted. But you already know they're wrong more often than they'll ever admit. I let out a slow breath. It won't matter. Even if I'm stronger. Even if I'm smarter. Even if I'm better. I'll still be from the branch. And that means I'll never have a seat at the table. You already sit closer than any of them realize. Only because they think you'll become your property. He flinched. Visibly, this time. Not offended. Just struck by the truth of it. I don't want that, he said, looking at me now, fully. Not for you. Not for us. I studied him for a moment. He meant it. Sometimes, I felt like I might have groomed him to be better. And was it all that unlikely? I was more than 1,000 years old. It was all too easy to put ideas in a kid's head. You are a good man, Hiyashi, don't lose that. I muttered as we sat there for a moment, just basking in the afterglow of our workout. He didn't respond, but I knew he agreed, and that was enough, because I didn't want a promise, I wouldn't believe it. He wasn't the first man who had promised me much, only to fail. Though at least he was better than my ex, Hiyashi might have been a Hinata, but he never tried to kill his wife and their unborn children. So yeah, not a high bar to clear, but given the amount of things I had seen from within my seal, it was honestly surprising how many people failed to clear it. Before long, the third great shinobi was in full swing. And it wasn't pretty. Compared to the wars before it, this one was many times more brutal. And it would be long, very long. I wasn't sure about how long it would last, I can't remember if it was even mentioned in the anime, and even if it was, I had experienced more than 1,000 years since then. Chakra might help with the memory, but it had its limits, remembering unimportant details from that long ago was beyond even me. But I still knew it would last long, because Minato would be key to ending it, and he would be around 20, maybe a bit older, and he was currently around 15, so at least another 5 years of war. Though it could be longer, as the world hadn't been at peace for the last few years, while war wasn't declared, at least formally, that might just be to keep morale up. It was entirely possible that history books would mention the war starting as much as 3 years ago. As for myself, I had fully skipped the genin arc. But then again, the Hyuga clan wasn't known for its genin, or as we still called them, fighters. The old ways still dominated the large clans, ranks such as genin, chunin, and jonin were still just being adapted. We still used the old names, fighter for genin, though who could fight, often too young to take to the field, but in an emergency, they could fight. Warriors, the backbone of any clan, the chunin level force, they were the main fighters, the main warriors, hence their name. The Hyuga clan in particular was famous for its massive number of warriors. This was due to the Byakugan and Gentle Fist, which were overwhelmingly powerful at the early stage. Genin level people just didn't have the skill or chakra to throw around ninjutsu at will. This meant that people mostly used low-level genjutsu and taijutsu, both things the Hyuga clan could deal with. So the Hyuga clan had the highest amount of warriors, while the Uchiha clan had the most elites, or jonin. The elites, the true might of a clan. Even the Hyuga clan had a good amount of those, but using only taijutsu had its limitations when it came to the highest levels of power. Even the number of those reaching the elite jonin level within our clan was very limited, but honestly, those were rare. It was, after all, the level of a clan leader. Even the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan only have a few of those, and the Hyuga clan even less, mostly just one or two at a time. I wasn't at that level yet, though it was only a matter of time before I reached it. I had, after all, mastered the gentle fist to a high level, and that included the more powerful techniques normally only taught to the main family. And while I knew these because I watched them be developed from within the moon, I could openly use them due to my being taught them by the main family. They honestly weren't too bad. The entire system, while oppressive, wasn't without hope. While none could escape the fate of being sealed, one could ensure that their children wouldn't be. The only thing with Hiyashi and his brother was unfortunate. The problem was that Hiyashi would be the future leader of the clan, and because Hizashi is his identical twin, he couldn't be left unsealed, as that would open up the possibility of him killing his brother and replacing him. It was unlikely, but the chance was there, so he was sealed. If not for that fact, he would have been left unsealed. After all, the main family didn't seal their children, not often. As long as a member was strong enough or talented enough, they could ensure their children weren't sealed. This pushed the entire main family to train hard, ensuring that the main family was strong, mostly elites. This was the reason they could hold power, other than the seal itself. At times, someone wouldn't be able to protect their children, and they would be sealed and sent to the branch. This was the flow of blood. The main family would take in the purest blood, the greatest talent from the branch family, like myself, and allow their weakest blood to enter the branch. This maintained the purity to the max, stopping the outflow of the Byakugan. A certain level of loyalty was expected, and I did everything I could to project that, and it worked. I was treated like if I was main family. Still, that didn't mean I didn't have the duties of the branch. I was expected to protect the main family members, to stop the loss of the Byakugan. It was the one thing all members of the clan agreed on: main family or branch, under no circumstances could the Byakugan be stolen. Yet, the main family couldn't hide away, and certainly not now, during this brutal war. While it wasn't in the most brutal phase yet, when even fresh genin would be sent out, it still required the clans to push themselves. Chunin and Jonin were desperately needed. Which meant the main family had to step up, since the branch had plenty of warriors, but few elites. So, I was given my own team. I was already considered an elite, or, as Konoha saw it, a Tokubetsu Jonin. After all, I wasn't good at much else but taijutsu, or at least the world wasn't aware of any other skills. Outside Konoha, near the land of bears, my team and I came to a stop. Alright, let's rest here. We won't be able to reach the target even if we run all night, so let's rest while we still can. Hi, X7. My team was a large 8-man team, mostly from the Hyuga clan, but it also had a Nara, an Inuzuka, and an Aburame. It was a sensor team on a mission to aid the front with scouting. The Nara, a young man named Shikoto, was there to help analyze the information we gathered about enemy movements. While the Aburame clan was almost equally smart, the higher-ups still insisted on a proper analyst. Say, you okay, kid? I couldn't help but ask him, given how he was panting like a dog. Well, even the literal dog in the team wasn't panting like him, so. Yeah, the guy was wiped out. I'm alright, just need a minute to catch my breath. Damn, I can't believe you guys can handle such speed for so long. He gasped out, looking at the rest of us. Cheer up, Bug Boy is just as tired, but he is better at hiding it. I patted his shoulder to reassure him. I will be sending out my swarm to keep guard. The guy in question said, completely ignoring anything I said. Yeah, they were quiet like that, rather antisocial. But then again, they were filled with bugs, even I kept my distance from him. Understood. Set your perimeter and report back if anything moves, I said. The Aburame gave a short nod and slipped into the trees, a faint buzzing already filling the night air as his swarm spread outward. I turned back to the others. Pairs of 2, I said. Rotate watch every 2 hours. We can't afford to be sluggish tomorrow. The Inuzuka boy, a wiry kid with sharp eyes and a lazy grin, thumped his chest lightly. Me and Kuro will take first watch. His dog, a stocky black-furred thing that looked like it could bite through a log, gave a soft growl of agreement. Good, I said. Shikoto, you and I will take second shift. Get some sleep. He gave a relieved exhale and flopped onto the nearest patch of grass without ceremony. Within seconds, he was snoring lightly. I shook my head, but I knew more couldn't be expected. He was from a ninjutsu clan. It was no wonder that he struggled keeping up with taijutsu clans like Hyuga and Inuzuka. The rest of the team moved smoothly, setting out minimal camps, no fires, no unnecessary noise. We had strict orders to avoid enemy detection until we reached the designated scouting point near the border. I sat down near the base of a wide tree, rolling my shoulders out, letting my breathing even. Tomorrow would be more dangerous. The land of bears wasn't officially part of the war, but it was a known hotspot for ambushes and border skirmishes. I suspected we weren't the only ones running operations through this area. Still, my team was a rarity, a full sensor team of this many people. No other village but Konoha could field something like this. From what I knew, we could field one sensor for every 10 shinobi we had. Which was miles ahead of the others, who might only be able to have one for every 100. So great was Konoha's advantage when it came to sensors. And was it any surprise? 3 of the world's greatest sensor clans had all joined this one village. Still, a group like this was rare, even among Konoha teams, more so because we had 5 members from the Hyuga clan, including. I turned my eyes over to where the other 4 members of my clan rested. There, in the middle of them, sat my true mission. A young main house member, barely 15, dressed in practical traveling gear but wearing the unmistakable sash of status over his shoulder. His name didn't matter much, not to me, not to this mission. What mattered was that he carried the bloodline. His Byakugan was strong, his chakra well developed, and the elders marked him as important. Too important to risk losing to enemy hands. He wasn't here because of his skill. He was here because the main family needed him seasoned, needed him tested, and because the war demanded even the precious be thrown into the fire eventually. And if anything happened to him, it would be my head they demanded in repayment. I watched as he adjusted his gloves, smoothing the fabric with careful, precise fingers. He caught me looking and gave a short nod, polite, acknowledging the pecking order without resentment. Good. It would make things easier if he didn't argue when I ordered him to duck or run. A faint flicker at the edge of my vision drew my attention. The Abarame's insects returning, tiny flickers of chakra-forming patterns I could only read with my Byakugan. All clear. For now. I leaned back against the tree trunk, letting my muscles relax without fully dropping my guard. Tomorrow, we would have to cross the last stretch of no man's land between us and the front. Scattered patrols. Bandits. Maybe even Iowa shinobi if we were unlucky. Yet, it was my mission to ensure fighting was kept to a minimum, that we got past any and all enemies without them knowing we were even there. All while we still got close enough to spot them before they spotted us. Not particularly difficult, but it did carry risks. Luck was sadly a major factor in this kind of mission. After all, just because sensors were rare in the other villages didn't mean they didn't have any. And if our luck was really bad, we would run into one good enough to spot up as we spotted them. Information was key in this kind of war, so it was key to stop the other side from gaining it, which was also why we were such a large group. Should we encounter other tracking units, we are meant to eliminate them. However, precisely due to how precious sensors are to the enemy, they will be under heavy protection. Which means there would at least be one Jonin in their team. I was confident I could handle that, but should there be more than 2? I would have to rely on my teammates, and that put the Byakugan at risk. War. Truly horrible. Do you see this, Hagoromo? Are you watching as the humans you entrusted chakra to use it for this? Killing. War. Do you regret turning against me? was naturally too much to hope for the mission to go without problems. Though honestly, it would have taken a damn miracle to complete it without combat at least a few times. Had we only needed to scout once, it wouldn't have been a problem, but given we had to continue scouring the area for a long time, we were bound to run into enemies. Bandits weren't a problem. They wouldn't be able to find us, and if we wanted to get rid of them, our resident bug swarm filled with all kinds of poisonous critters was enough to handle it from afar. No, even local shinobi weren't a big deal. A small place like the Land of Bears didn't have many elite fighters, and certainly not enough to risk taking on a team from Konoha. Even if they won, they were likely to earn a powerful enemy, and if they lost, they would also earn one. So, only the other shinobi villages were a real threat. And it just so happened that after only about a week here, we ran into a nightmare team. One with a very skilled sensor, able to track us. And while we too could track them, we couldn't lose them. So, yeah, a fight was incoming and a bad one at that. Alright, we have to engage them. They have 2 large chakra signatures, so at least 2 Jonin-level opponents. I kept my voice low and calm. This was no time for panic, even if it was the first true danger any of us here had encountered. The others stiffened around me. Even the Hyuga clan members, usually so composed, glanced at each other in grim acknowledgement. The Inuzuka boy muttered something under his breath, his dog bristling at his side. Orders? Asked Shikito, stepping closer, his voice tight. I tapped the map we'd been keeping updated on a flattened rock nearby. They're tracking us by our trail, I said. But their formation is wide. They're cautious. They don't know who they're following, just that it's a large group. That was our one advantage. Or it could have been. One possible tactic would have been to split up, and thin their numbers while keeping their Jonin busy. The problem was that the main clan member, I couldn't afford to split the group up. We needed to stay together for his sake, which meant we needed to engage in a direct fight. I looked over at Shikito. Nara, got any ideas for how to deal with this situation? I wasn't out of ideas myself, but I figured that I might as well ask. His clan was known for their tactical ability after all. He frowned, chewing on his bottom lip for a second, thinking hard, not panicking. Good. At least he wasn't completely green. If we try to flee, they'll pick us off one by one, he said, voice low but steady. And they're too fast to outrun if they spot us breaking formation. Exactly, I said. So, he tapped the map, finger tracing a rough circle around a narrow valley a little further west. Here, the terrain bottlenecks. We could force them into a kill zone. Limit their movement. Use the trees and narrow paths to neutralize their numbers. It was a good plan. Smart, simple, and most importantly, it kept the team together. I smiled slightly. Not bad for a first war. He flushed, but straightened his shoulders a little. All right, everyone listen up, I said, raising my voice just enough to cut through the mounting tension. We're going to fall back toward the valley. Hyuga in front and sides. Inuzuka on point with Kuro. Bug boy in the center with the main house heir. I turned to the boy in question, meeting his pale eyes. You stay in the middle. You protect yourself if you must, but your job is survival first. Understood. He nodded sharply, no hesitation. Good. We might just all make it without injuries. The movement was tense, but disciplined. Given that we knew we would soon engage the enemy, we gave up on stealth and slowed down, saving a bit of energy. It hardly mattered that they gained on us, we would reach the target area well before them anyway. If we had the time, we could set up some more traps, but we didn't, and with a sensor on their side, they might be pointless, so again, we skipped all that. I kept my Byakugan active as we ran. I had trained them to near perfection, allowing me to use them with barely any chakra cost, so I could keep an eye on our pursuers as we ran. The enemy was following, but more cautious now. They'd realized we weren't blind prey. They were adjusting their approach, falling back slightly, tightening formation. They knew we were preparing something. Smart bastards. We reached the valley mouth within an hour. It was perfect, narrow, steep walls of stone and tangled undergrowth. Normally it wasn't a good idea to fight possible Iowa shinobi in a place like this, too much stone for them to use. This particular valley, however, was perfect. The undergrowth and thick vines covering the walls and ground made it difficult to use them against us. Any earth-style ninjutsu would get caught, which would at least slow down projectiles enough that we could dodge them. So while they might want to use ninjutsu, the best bet here was taijutsu. Still didn't mean we should get careless. I gestured quickly to the others. The Hyuga spread out along the ridges, taking positions in the trees. Shikoto crouched low near a fallen log, hands already weaving into familiar shadow seals. The Inuzuka boy and his dog hunkered down by a boulder, ready to spring. The Aburame released another cloud of his insects into the thick foliage, masking our scents and laying a silent trap. All was ready. Now we just had to wait. They were close. I watched them long before they reached the valley entrance. Before my Byakugan, their chakra signatures were stark against the world, bright flares moving with trained precision. 3 Jonin-level shinobi. 3 problems. I don't know how I missed the third before they came this close, but it was a problem. My side only had me with Jonin strength. I might be able to barely handle 2, but even if I was willing to show off all my cards, handling 3 wouldn't be easy. Not yet. I was only in my mid-teens, not yet in my prime. I wasn't as strong as I could be, my reach was not as long as it would be in a few years, and my chakra needed time to grow. And there weren't just the 3 of them. All in all, there were 10 of them, more than on our side, and stronger than our side. It didn't look good at all. All I could hope was that the extra 7 weren't very strong. Their chakra signatures seemed to indicate genin level, but even genin could be dangerous, especially if they were used properly. And in war, everyone was dangerous. I didn't have time to hesitate. Prepare for engagement. I signaled quickly, flashing a few concise hand signs to the Hyuga on the ridge. We couldn't flee. We couldn't hide. We could only stand. The lead Jonin, a tall, heavy-set man brimming with stone chakra, moved into the valley first, flanked by the nimble woman with cutting chakra and the cautious sensor hanging back behind them. The 7 genin spread out like a net, trying to encircle the valley. I bared my teeth slightly. Smart. By stacking up, they were vulnerable to AoE attacks, and by splitting up in a wide net, they could engage with their superior numbers. Thankfully, the small area to move in would mean that it would quickly become a taijutsu battle, no matter if they want it or not. And my Hyuga clan is never afraid of a taijutsu battle. The Iowa shinobi didn't rush. They advanced at a steady pace, confident, measured. They knew their advantage. When they finally came into clear view, the heavy-set leader halted a few meters ahead of us, his feet planted like deep roots in the earth. He raised a hand in a gesture of parley. I didn't move. Neither did my team. Team from Konoha, he called out, his voice low and rough like gravel grinding under a heavy boot. You are outnumbered, outmatched. His eyes scanned our formation, sharp, calculating. He lingered for a moment on face, my eyes, the Byakugan. I didn't wear anything to hide the seal on my forehead, though the others all did. By showing the curse seal, I let them know that there was no point in trying to seal my eyes, made me less of a target. The others all wore something to cover their foreheads, to disguise the main family's markless forehead. But even if he noticed the fact that he couldn't steal my eyes, he still took note of the many Hyuga clan members in this team. A slow smirk tugged at his lips. A smart commander would know when to surrender, he said. Lay down your weapons. Submit. We'll take prisoners. He didn't say what kind of prisoners. He didn't need to. Behind him, the genin shifted restlessly, weapons at the ready. The woman to his left, the fast one, gave him a small look of disgust. Members of the Hyuga clan were all good-looking, our skin fair and bodies lean. We had a noble air to use, and I in particular looked exceptionally fine. The mark on my forehead meant I would die the moment the main clan learned of my capture, but he would still be able to enjoy his sweet time with me as his prisoner. It would be a fate worse than death. Defiled and abused, then killed off. Yeah, there would be no surrendering. The man must have seen the cold look in my eyes, because his smirk only deepened. He thought we were scared. He thought wrong. I stepped forward half a pace, shoulders relaxed, hands loose at my sides. No, I said, my voice carrying clearly over the valley. Simple. Final. The Iowa leader's smile twisted into something uglier. His chakra flared in answer, a deep rumble that made the vines around us tremble. So be it, he growled. We offered you mercy. He dropped his hand. The world exploded into motion. While my side were all teens, and their sides too had plenty of young genin, there were no fools here. We all knew our advantages and disadvantages. They had the number, they had the strength, so they wanted to use that. They also knew that we likely had the upper hand in a battle of taijutsu. We knew that, so we wanted to engage them, and they wanted to maintain their distance. Stop us from closing in, so they could kill us from afar using ninjutsu. Two of the Jonin moved to intercept me as I charged. The man and the faster woman. The third, the censor, stepped back with the genin, and they quickly began weaving hand signs. The first barrage came fast. I darted forward, weaving between the two charging Jonin, each of them angling to pin me in place. Behind them, the censor and the genin unleashed their first wave. A wall of earth exploded upward across the valley entrance, sealing it shut. No escape. At the same time, sharp spires of stone burst from the ground, cutting off easy paths between the ridges where my Hyuga had positioned themselves. They were trying to isolate us. Crush us piecemeal. Smart. But not smart enough. I twisted between two rising pillars of stone, closing the last few meters between myself and the heavy Jonin. He swung, predictable, a hammer blow fueled by stone-reinforced muscle. I shifted my weight and ducked low under the strike, feeling the raw force of it pass over my head like a landslide. A second later, the fast woman blurred in from my right. I could see the sharp chakra coating her kunai. I turned with her strike, letting it graze the outside of my sleeve, and slammed my palm into her side, disrupting her flow of chakra at the ribcage. She gasped but didn't fall. I was forced to give up on the follow-up to that strike as the male was on top of me again, forcing me to dodge to the side, then low as a kunai flew through where my head had been moments before. Then I had to jump. I saw the earth under me glow with chakra, and no sooner had my feet left the ground before it transformed into a large spike, shooting straight up. The others used they